सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सगना ललिता श्री विशाखां वितांस नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णाप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामिनिति नाम्ने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारणे वांछा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यः च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्नाय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतसे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपस गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नीलाचल निवासाय नित्याय परमात्मने बलभद्र सुभद्राभ्याम जगन्नाथाय ते नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। संसारी नाम करुणा प्राण गुरु। Hare Krishna. So already all of you went through the star verse of Bhagavatam. Ete chams kala pumsam krishnastu Bhagavan swayam indriyan vivatrum loke vidyanti yogi yoge. And then we'll continue from the next verses of chapter number 3. So before we go to the next verses, we'll also once more see the overview of chapter number 3. So please give me a minute. So in first 5 verses of chapter number 3, Purus avatars, Garbhadaksha Vishnu, Karnadaksha Vishnu, Kshirodaksha Vishnu, they are mentioned. Text number 6 to 27, 22 incarnations in this universe are mentioned. Text 20 to 29, it is mentioned how Krishna is the fountainhead of all the incarnations. And that also talks about our Paribhasa Sutra of Srimad Bhagavatam. Ete chams kala pumsam Krishnastu Bhagavan swayam. 30 to 39, we discuss about imaginary material forms like Virat Rupa. So these are material forms, but they are material forms of Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is why they are also objects of meditation for different spiritualists, and they help a person to get rid of sinful tendencies. Especially for the yogis, if they want to meditate on Paramatma and they are not qualified, they meditate on Virat Rupa. So in this way, one should do Krishna Katha and be free from ignorance. So that is 30 to 39. And 40 to 44, which we are going to discuss today, is how Srimad Bhagavatam is a literary incarnation of Krishna. So this is the summary of chapter number 3, and I am supposed to give from text number 40 onwards. Okay. So we'll start from 40. So like deity is not stone, deity is a Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. As holy name is not ordinary sound, it is Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam is not just a book. Srimad Bhagavatam is Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And that is how we'll begin with the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam from text number 40. So I'll share the translations and verses. So we'll discuss only those verses which are very important, and we'll read all the translations. So this text number 40. So this is also a very famous verse which discusses about the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. So while being muted, devotees can repeat after me. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
उत्तम श्लोक चरितम
उत्तमश्लोकचरितं
चकार भगवान ऋषि
चकार भगवान् रुचिः
निःश्रेयसाय लोकस्य
निःश्रेयसाय लोकस्य
धन्यम स्वस्ति अयनम महत्.
धान्यं स्वस्ति अवयनं यात्.
Please read that translation.
This Srimad Bhagavatam is the literally incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. The incarnation of God, it is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect.
So this verse itself talks about lot of glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. So idam Bhagavatam nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam. So there's a Purana, name is Srimad Bhagavatam, and Uttam Sloka Charitam. So this it composes of the Uttam Slok. Lord is called Uttam Slok because he is glorified by choicest poetry. And Chakar Bhagavan Rishi, this is compiled by Vyasdev. And Vyasdev is incarnation of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chakar Bhagavan Rishi. So in the Sad Sandarbhas by Jiva Goswami mentions a particular incident about Parasar Rishi. So Parasar Rishi explains to his disciples that as far as position of Vyasa is concerned, even I was Vyasa in 26th millennia, 26th Yoga cycle. But as far as my son Vyas, Krishnadvapan Vyasa is concerned, he is special in the sense that he is incarnation of Supreme Lord. And the proof is that if he was not the incarnation of Supreme Personality of Godhead, it was not possible for him to write a book like Mahabharata, where a lot of details about different levels of dharma are given. So that is how our Vyas is special in the sense that he is the incarnation of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Parasar Muni was also Vyas previous to previous Kali Yuga. So this day of this particular time is very special in the sense that we have Krishna who appears once in day of Brahma, Lord Chaitanya who appears once in day of Brahma, and then we also have Vyasdev who is incarnation of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then it is meant for Nisresaya Lokasya. It is meant for ultimate good of all people. Dhanyam Swasti Ayanam Mahat. And it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. So these are glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. So devotees can continue with next text, 41. So this is the parampara of Bhagavatam discussed here.
Sri Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized, after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and histories of the universe.
Yeah. So the parampara is given that Vyasadeva gave it to his son, Sukadeva Goswami. And he is the most respected among the self-realized people that we find in this particular episode also, where personalities like Narada, Vyasdev, all of them were sitting there. And then Sukadeva Goswami was selected as the person who would speak Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. And Vyasdev compiled this Bhagavatam after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and Puranas, histories of the universe. So there also we find that how the essence of Vedas is Vedanta Sutra. And the natural commentary on Vedanta Sutra is Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is how Srimad Bhagavatam is considered the cream of all Vedic literatures. Please continue, text 42.
Shukdev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the great Emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganges, awaiting death without taking food or drink.
So in this way, Vyasadeva gave it to Sukdev Goswami. Sukdev Goswami spoke to Maharaj Parikshit, and in the assembly where Parikshit Maharaj was sitting along with all the sages, Sut Goswami was also there. Okrasrava Sut, the son of Romharsan Sut. And he heard directly from Sukdev Goswami, and then he spoke to the sages of Naimisaranya. So this is the parampara of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyasadeva spoke to Sukdev Goswami spoke to Parikshit Maharaj. In that assembly, Sut Goswami was there, and later on Sut Goswami speaks that to the sages of Naimisaranya. So this is the parampara of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is not just ordinary book, because many Puranas were spoken by Sukdev Goswami to the sages of Naimisaranya. Okay, Dhananjay Prabhu, here's a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. So here you are mentioning that Lom Harsan Shut. So is it Shut is a title, or so what this Shut really stand for it?
So Sut is generally a caste. So when, as far as I remember, is that when there is a marriage between a Brahman and a Kshatriya, so then the child born is called Sut. So intercaste marriage. So Sut is a title. So Rom Harsan Sut, his son was Ugrasrava Sut. So it's a title. Like Janak. Janak is not a name, Janak is a title.
Thank you. Hare.
Thank you. And then there's a famous verse. So you can repeat this verse. And this verse is also like worth memorizing. So please repeat after me. Krishne Sodham Pagate.
Krishne Sodhamo Pagate.
Dharma Jnana Devi Saha.
Dharma Jnana
Saha
Kalau Nashta Drasamesa.
Kalau Nashtirdarashamesha
Puran Arkwadu Noditaha.
Puranarko Dhunodita.
Please read the translation.
This Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana.
So Krishna Sadham Upagate. When Krishna went to his own dham, Golok Vrindavan. But along with Krishna, who went there? Dharma and Gyan. Both of them went away. So Dharma Jnana Devi Saha. So as soon as Krishna went away, Kali Yuga entered. So how did Kali Yuga enter? Because Krishna himself allowed the Kali Yuga to enter. So just few days ago, I was going through the purport of Vishwanath Thakur in 10 to 11. So there he mentions that Krishna was thinking that if I go just like that to Golok Vrindavan, Kali Yuga, who wants to enter, will not have any opportunity to enter. Because of my presence, the 4 legs of Dharma have become very, very strong. They have become more strong even than they were in Satya Yuga. And when I depart from this world, devotees would further increase their devotion service, because they would be now practicing devotion service in separation. So devotion service in separation is more powerful than devotion service in union. So they will become very powerful. As far as people who are against the religion are concerned, I have already killed them. And those who are neutral automatically will become devotees, because these devotees would preach to the people who are neutral. So in this way, there's no possibility for Kali Yuga to enter inside. So that is what I would do. I would help people to offend me. And then Kali Yuga will get an opportunity to enter inside. And that is the reason Krishna leaves his body, illusory body, in the form of a body made of flesh and bones, so that people can think, people can say that, oh, Krishna had body like all of us and he died like such a bad death. In this way, they would offend me. And when they offend me, then they would have opportunity to move towards irreligion. And then Kali Yuga can enter inside. So that is how Kali Yuga enters inside. And when Kali Yuga enters inside, dharma and jnana, they also go away. So Kalau nashta drisamisa. But when there is darkness throughout the whole world, something has to be there to enlighten the world. And that is son of Srimad Bhagavatam. So when there is dense darkness of Kali Yuga in the world, the son of Srimad Bhagavatam arises and dispels away the darkness of ignorance about the age of Kali. So that is how Srimad Bhagavatam is incarnation of Krishna himself. So in Kali Yuga, Krishna certainly comes as Lord Chaitanya. He comes in the form of holy name, and he also comes in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the glory of Srimad Bhagavatam. Next, text 44. So then he is encouraging to recite Srimad Bhagavatam or hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Tatra kirtayato vipra.
Tatra kirtayato vipra.
Viprarser bhuri tejasaha. Ham chadyagamam tatra.
Aham chadyagamam tatra.
Nivishtas tat anugrahat. Soham va sravayasyami. Yathadhitam yathamati. Please read that translation.
O learned Brahmanas, when Shukdev Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus, by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now, I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it.
So there are three important aspects in this particular translation. If we see, one is that he heard with rapt attention. So that is how rapt attention is very important. And especially because I'm also attending Bhakti Vedanta. So personally, I have a realization that when we hear online, a lot of distractions are there. It becomes difficult. So that is why, to the degree we hear from rapt attention, to that degree, we can absorb ourselves in the sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam. So first, he had a qualification is that he heard with rapt attention. Now the second question comes is, like many devotees, certainly out of humility, many times speak that I don't have realization, I am not thoroughly learned. But even then, Prabhupada would encourage devotees to preach. Because although the message of Srimad Bhagavatam is pure, because we are accepting from the impure senses, there is a possibility that what we have realized may be wrong. It is possible. But then, even then, devotees are encouraged to recite Srimad Bhagavatam. And how one can recite? So first qualification is that one should hear himself with rapt attention. After that, yathaditam yatamatihi. As we have learnt it, we apply in our life, we realize it, and according to our capacity, we can recite Srimad Bhagavatam. Because as far as understanding Srimad Bhagavatam is concerned, understanding Krishna is concerned, Jiva in any capacity can never understand Krishna or these incarnations of Krishna in completion. Even the great personality like Brahma, they speak. Api arvag vritto yasya mahitu admivadaya yatha mati grananti istma kirtanugrah vigraham. That my dear Lord, as much as you allow us to understand us or understand yourself, as much as you allow us to understand you, we can understand you. So as much Lord allows, only that much we can understand. And as much we can understand, we can speak for our own purification. So, because as far as conditioned living entities or even the labeled entities are concerned, nobody can understand Krishna in full. That is not possible. But that should not discourage us. Even then, yatha ditham yatamatihi. So as much we have learned, we have realized, that much we can speak Srimad Bhagavatam to others. And that is also the mood of the Bhagavatam speaker, that he should understand that nobody can fully understand Srimad Bhagavatam. We can speak as much as we have absorbed, as much as we have realized. So this is chapter number 3. And now we'll enter in chapter number 4. So this chapter number 3 of Bhagavatam. So now we'll get into the summary of chapter number 4. Chapter number 4 is very rich. We'll also get into a lot of purports of Prabhupada, because Prabhupada has given very powerful purports. So this chapter number 4, appearance of Narada Muni. Because now the background of Srimad Bhagavatam is going to be spoken. Under what conditions was Srimad Bhagavatam spoken? Like chapter number 1 of Bhagavad-Gita sets the background of Bhagavad-Gita. Somebody would like to explain how chapter number 1 of Bhagavad-Gita explains the background of Bhagavad-Gita, or sets the background of Bhagavad-Gita? You can just maybe unmute and speak. I know there are a lot of enlightened souls here. They can just speak for my entertainment also.
I'll try. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to explain it fully.
Yeah, please.
In first chapter, the first verse where Dhritarashtra says to Sanjay that how my sons and the sons of Pandu have done in Kurukshetra, you tell me. Now that shows that he is differentiating his sons and the sons of Pandu. So that point of differentiation is the first thing which is the point which is said in Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. And then we see that Duryodhan goes to his commander, that is Dronacharya, and he is also again indirectly telling him that don't be partial to your favorite students, and as you should remember that you are my commander and not theirs. And then when Arjuna he sees all his friends, his relatives, all his senior forefathers in his guru in the battlefield, he starts lamenting about the whole thing, that I don't want to fight here. Now this lamentation is what I feel is the setting scene for the rest of Bhagavad Gita. And in order to remove this lamentation, the whole Bhagavad Gita is said that there is no need to lament on all these things, because everything is already set by Lord Krishna, and we are just instrument. You are only instrument to fight the battle. I mean, it's for Arjuna that he has to fight the battle. Everything is already done by Lord Krishna. So this lamentation is one thing, and then through this lamentation, Lord Krishna is explaining the whole nectar of knowledge to Arjuna, and then through him to us.
Yeah. Thank you. So that's why Bhagavad Gita's first chapter is also called Visad Yoga by many of the acharyas. Yeah. Vishnu Kantam Mataji. You wanted to say something?
Only because in first chapter it is where Bhagavad-Gita has been spoken and why it was spoken. So that is why it is called background.
Yeah. So thank you. So this was a very important point. The audience, Arjuna, who is so qualified, is the person who is hearing. Krishna is the person who is speaking. So that also shows a background. Because when the audience is very qualified and the speaker is very qualified, suddenly the conversation is going to be very qualified. So this also sets a background. Thank you. Yes, Dhananjay Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So in Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, basically it start with 4+1 questions. Like one question is just touched upon in the last sloka, that was 1.44, and which continued in the second chapter. And then in Srimad Bhagavatam, also first chapter, first canto, it has start with 6 questions which has been asked by the sages. So basically this questions answered. So it all Bhagavad Gita goes in terms of questions and answer. And there's Srimad Bhagavatam, the way it is presented, this is also a questions, and then it has been explained in answer, and then again it followed with other set of questions. So it is all a conversations where it is been raised in terms of questions and answer. And this also shows our philosophy that when we have a complete surrenderness and with complete faith, then with that, until unless we do not have we are inquisitive, we cannot able to understand, and we cannot able to realize. So probably this is what the connections I understand between this Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, thank you. So there also the background is 5 reasons for Arjuna not to fight, and the questions are there, and the question answer goes on. And that is how Bhagavatam also begins with the question answers. And also background, when we say background, also means the introduction of the devotees spoke from a philosophical point of view. And if you see from dramatic point of view, so from dramatic point of view, if you see in Bhagavad Gita, different personalities are introduced. The circumstances are introduced. And also the importance of the situation is also introduced. So there we find how conch shells were blown. That means any warrior was allowed to shoot arrows, shoot any weapon. That means an inattentive movement would be fatal. Anybody can die at any moment. So in such a situation, Bhagavad Gita was spoken to show the urgency of Bhagavad Gita. So if somebody can hear Bhagavad Gita in a war, that means one cannot say that I don't have time to hear Bhagavad Gita. And also the personalities are introduced. So similarly, we find here, now the personalities would be introduced. So the first circumstance in which Bhagavatam is spoken is where all the sages of Naimisaranya, they were trying very hard to remove the ill effects of Kali Yuga, but the only benefit is that their faces became black because of smoke. And at that time, now the glories of Bhagavatam are spoken. That ultimately Srimad Bhagavatam can dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. And that is why they all sat and heard Srimad Bhagavatam. And also the introduction is going to start now, because the last thing, Vyasdev's dissatisfaction after writing and compiling all the Vedic literatures, then he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam and became satisfied. So that sets the background of Srimad Bhagavatam. That under what situations, by whom was Srimad Bhagavatam written. So that's how this particular chapter, chapter number 4, would also set a background for Srimad Bhagavatam. Under what situation was Srimad Bhagavatam written? So chapter number 4 and chapter number 5. So that's why verse number 1 to 13. In that, Sonag Rishi appreciated the Sut Goswami. And then he asked 4 questions also. We'll discuss all the 4 questions. And then we hear the Sut Goswami's reply which will set the background of Srimad Bhagavatam. So how they were contemplating for welfare and of the Kalyoga Vasis. He divided the Vedas, then reasons for division, and despite compiling all the Vedas, he was dissatisfied. So we'll be discussing all these things in chapter number 4. So now we'll begin with chapter number 4. So just a minute, I'll share with all of you. So Sonagrishi's question. So the appearance of Sri Narada, chapter number 4. So you can repeat this verse after me. Vyasvacha
Vyasavacha
iti brahmanam samstuya
iti brahmanam samstuya
muninam virga satrina
muninam dirghasattrinam
vriddha kulpati sutam
vriddha kulapati sutam
pavrit sonako abravit.
brabhrich shonako abravit.
Please read the translation.
Vyasadeva said, on hearing Suta Goswami speak thus, Shaunaka Muni, who was the elderly learned leader of all the rishis engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Suta Goswami by addressing him as follows.
So in this way, in this particular verse, we find 3 particular words: Vriddaha, Kulpatihi, and Bhavrichaha. So these 3 words are important because this demarks the qualification of the head of the assembly. In an assembly of learned devotees or audience, somebody has to be made the leader of the assembly. So I am from North India. In North India, generally they call him Parikshit. Generally, they don't know who will become the Parikshit of this Bhagavad Saptah. So that is how they would call him. So then who is supposed to be that person? Who is the head of the assembly? So 3 qualifications given. First is Vriddaha. So not just in age, also in learning and realization. And certainly age is also given quite a good amount of emphasis. So he was elderly, Vriddaha, this first thing. Second is Kulpatihi. So among those thousands of sages, he was the head of the assembly. So that position is also given a respect. And second is Bhavrichaha, learning. He was very learned. So although Krishna consciousness doesn't depend on anything, but despite that, when we give respect, we have to give respect according to certain criteria. And similarly, the head of the assembly also has to be chosen depending on certain criteria. So when somebody is elder in age, he has to be given respect. Somebody has an administrative position in the sense that he's head of the assembly or head of a group or a head of a temple or head of a society, then he has to be given respect. And also a learned person is also given respect. So although Krishna consciousness doesn't depend on any of these things, but despite that, as a social etiquette, we give respect when people have all these 3 qualities. And such a head of assembly generally is the person who speaks questions traditionally on behalf of the audience. Especially if we go to Naimisaranya. So I went there, such a huge place. Even Sonak Gaddi and Suta Gaddi is so far off. But after going to that place, I could realize that despite lack of any sort of technology, in the sense that they won't be using any technology, it is possible to hear. So when the environment is free from noise pollution, one can hear. It's possible. So, but he was asking questions on the behalf of all the sages. So these are qualification of Sonak Rishi. Somebody can read the purport. So beautiful purport by Prabhupada.
In a meeting of learned men, when there are congratulations or addresses for the speaker, the qualifications of the congratulator should be as follows. He must be the leader of the house and an elderly man. He must be vastly learned also. Sri Shaunika Rishi had all these qualifications, and thus he stood up to congratulate Sri Sutta Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from the Shukadev Goswami and also realized it personally. Personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous Acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous Acharya, and at the same time, he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Shaunika, could estimate the value of the speaker, Sri Sutta Goswami, simply by his uttering Yathadhitam and Yathamati, and therefore he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original Acharya. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting where Bhagavatam was being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam so that the real purpose can be served without difficulty. Unless the situation is created, Bhagavatam recitation for extraneous purposes is useless labor both for the speaker and for the audience.
Yeah. So in this way, Prabhupada, he has spoken very valuable points in this particular purport. It's like a very golden purport. So the qualification of Sonakadi Rishi is given here. Sri Sonakadi Rishi is given here. And then Prabhupada also talks about what is meaning of realization. So what is meaning of realization? The original purpose of the text must be maintained. Like many times, certain people, they say that Prabhupada has spoken so much about Krishna, Krishna, Krishna in his Bhagavad-Gita. So even Karma Yoga, he explains as Bhakti Yoga. Sometimes even Jnana Yoga also as Bhakti Yoga. So why Krishna, Prabhupada explains so much about Krishna? So while speaking about all these things, ultimately Krishna has spoken Bhagavad Gita so that he compares Bhakti Yoga with Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga and everything, so that Bhakti Yoga is glorified. And if you find Prabhupada has glorified Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga throughout whole Bhagavad Gita. So the purpose for which Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada has maintained that. Because Prabhupada knows Kali-yuga Vasis are so lazy that they may read just 1-2 verses and start practicing Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga. So that is why in none of the purports he has given an opportunity to anyone to practice anything else than Bhakti Yoga. So that is how the original purpose of Bhagavad Gita is maintained by Prabhupada. And that is why Bhagavad Gita of Prabhupada has made so many devotees throughout the whole world. So this first or very important part, that the purpose of the text must be maintained. Like Prabhupada will sometimes criticize certain speakers of Bhagavad Gita, saying that they say that Bhagavad Gita talks about non-violence. But Krishna has encouraged Arjuna to do violence. So whether violence or non-violence, whatever is required for one to become instrument of hand of Krishna and practice Bhakti Yoga and go closer to Krishna, that has to be done. So many times people have their own purpose, and that is how they misinterpret the text. So that's the original purpose of the text has to be maintained. Second thing is no obscure meaning should be screwed out. Like many times people want to have something which they want to present and that the speaker doesn't want to present. Especially somebody takes out certain text out of context, that is what it happens. So while we go through text by text, then the original purpose is understood. Original meaning is understood. At the same time, it has to be presented in an interesting manner so that audience can be attentive. So that is also very important. And that is why we have a TTC courses and all these things are there. BSTTC courses, teacher training courses are there. So that it can be presented in an interesting manner so that the audience can be awake. And Prabhupada also writes that how one should not one should try to surpass the previous Acharya. So can somebody tell one pastime from Chaitanya Charitamrita where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that somebody was transpassing the previous Acharya and he was very unhappy?
Sridhar Swami.
Yeah.
Vallabhacharya.
Vallabhacharya. Maharaj maybe can speak this pastime in little concise so that all the devotees can be enlightened. Maharaj is authority in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
You are my teacher, so as you have ordered, I have to. Once Vallabhacharya came to see Mahaprabhu and he want to show some of his articles. I have given some purport, but it is not in it's beyond the purport of Siddharsham. Mahaprabhu chastised him. So those who don't follow their husband, they are prostitute. So it's Siddharshami, as is Shami title. So as is Shami, if you don't follow previous acharyas, then you are prostitute. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sarcastically, jokingly told him, though he was a nice devotee, but still Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to create a standard, he little as a guru, he has the right to chastise his disciple. So this is a mentality of prostitute, not to follow previous acharya.
Thank you, Maharaj. So that is how Mahaprabhu himself had that mood that we want to not surpass the previous acharyas. So when all these things are mentioned, then one can share one's realization. So certainly one can share the realization, but this is the criteria. And this is the definition of realization also. And as we discussed in the previous verse, yatha aditam yatamati. So as I have understood and heard from the previous acharyas and according to my realization, as I have learned, I'll explain that. So as soon as Suta Goswami hears that, he becomes, or Suta Goswami speaks that and Sonak Rishi hears that, he becomes very happy. And he is a qualified person to speak Srimad Bhagavatam. He is a qualification of a speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's what we learned from this text. Please read text number 2.
Hare Krishna. Sonaka said, O Suta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Sukdev Goswami. Hare Krishna.
So this particular verse depicts the eagerness of the hearer, eagerness of Sonak Rishi. So he glorifies the Srimad Bhagavatam, that this was spoken by great and powerful sage Sukdev Goswami. And because Sukdev Goswami is such a great and powerful sage, he won't spend 7 days, 7 nights in speaking something which is not useful. Certainly he would speak something which is very, very valuable. And that is how he shows his eagerness, that we are very eager to hear that pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by great and powerful sage Sukdev Goswami. It has to be very, very valuable. So in this way, when the hearers or the audience is very eager to hear the message, the speaker also becomes very encouraged to speak. So this was the eagerness. And then he begins with his questions. Like some devotee was mentioning, that how Bhagavad-Gita begins with question answers. And suddenly we find questions here also. So the questions begin now. Please read text number 3.
Question 1. In what period and at what place was this first begun? And why was this taken up? From where did Krishna, Dvaipayana, Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature?
So this question is basically talking about the background of Srimad Bhagavatam. In what period it started, which place it began, why it was taken up, so why there was a conversation, and from where Vyasadeva get this inspiration to compile this literature. Because already he has written so many Vedic literatures. He has written their essence in Vedanta Sutras, in the form of Formulata Sutras. Then why did he take so much of effort to compile this Srimad Bhagavatam? And from where did he get that inspiration? So he mentions about the background of Srimad Bhagavatam and why it was compiled. Okay, so just a minute. And then he talks about the speaker. Next question is about the speaker. So please repeat after me. Tasya putro mahayogi samdrin nirvikalpaka ekantamatiir unnidro Gudo Muda Iveyate. Please read the translation.
Hare Krishna. His Vyasadeva's son was a great devotee and equibalanced monist whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being exposed, he appeared like an ignorant man.
Yeah. So these are the glories of the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, because who has spoken is also very important. Like we will find sometimes Prabhupada would be speaking anything practically, and devotees would record it. Because who speaks is also very important. Rather, it's very, very important because such a person who is self-realized would speak out self-realization. Like once, one devotee was sharing that even Prabhupada was going in the early morning hours to respond to the nature's call. Some devotee was behind him with a camera, following him. And Prabhupada said, oh, actually, I'm going for respond to nature's call. You should not follow me. You people should understand when somebody is going with a lota and he is going in the farms, what is he going to do there? So devotees would like to catch each and every moment of Prabhupada. So that's why similarly we find the qualities of Sukadeva Goswami. What are these qualities? Mahayogi. He's a great devotee of the Lord. Second quality is given as Samdra Nirvikalpakaha, an equibalanced monist. Equibalanced monist means he knew how to control his mind and senses. So he knew all these things. Like this Hanuman Presak Maharaj always speaks. Intelligent are not those who just think. They know, they think how to think, and they can plan what to think. So they don't just think. They know how to think, they know what they think, and they can also think what they plan to think. That means they can even control the mind, what to think at what time. So this is the qualification of a Samdrik Nirvikalpakaha, equibalanced monist. They can use the mind like we use our laptop and mobiles and all these things. So there's another quality which he has. Ekanta Matihi, whose mind is always concentrated in monism, Ekanta. Unnidraha Gudaha. So nidra also means, apart from sleep, also means ignorance. So you are transcendental to mundane activities. Later on, we'll see that he was not even aware that he has a body. So he was totally above the bodily consciousness. Muda eveyate. But for ordinary people, he was unexposed. That means he was such a transcendentalist, but to find him is very difficult because he looked like an ignorant person. So ordinary people couldn't understand that he is such a realized soul. Now certainly in ISKCON we have as soon as person becomes senior, immediately by his aura you can understand he's a senior person. But he was such a person that nobody could understand. He made no distinction between male and female. That means he was free from bodily consciousness. And he was being detached. Generally, he would stay only long enough for a cow to be milked. Now, this also raises many, many questions. All the qualities. Why? Because such a person who is concentrated in monism, why did he meet a person like Parikshit Maharaj? Because generally, those who are sannyasis, especially in the previous days, they would not like to meet the kings. So why did he meet not just a king, an emperor of the whole world? Then second question comes is, how was he identified? Because he appeared like an ignorant person. In those days, Facebook and WhatsApp and all these things were not there, even cameras were not there. So there was no announcement that in this particular Sabha, Sukdev Goswami is going to come. Sukdev Goswami had no information. So how is it that possible that Parikshit Maharaj could trace out Sukdev Goswami could understand Parikshit Maharaj? Also, he made no distinction between male and female. He was totally free from the bodily consciousness. So why did he come in front of an emperor and spoke? He should have spoken to some sages, because he doesn't make a distinction between rich and poor. And also, apart from that, he was a householder. Certainly, he had taken retirement by that time. So he would stay in the house of the householder only till the cows were milked. So then why did he speak to Parikshit Maharaj, who was a householder, and in external sense also we say in the sense that he was a king? Like we find Lord Chaitanya never wanted to meet Prataprudra, because King Prataprudra was a king. So the very reason he was a king, Mahaprabhu said that he is disqualified. I cannot meet him. So then why did such a detached Sukdev Goswami meet with Parikshit Maharaj? So these qualities also raise these questions. But somebody had a hand raised, now it is not there. Okay, seems now there's no hand question now. Can read text number 5.
Krishna. While Srila Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth. Although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked, but they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them made no distinction between male and female. But the sage made such distinctions. In the Bhagavad-Gita 5.18, it is said that a learned sage looks equally on a learned and gentle Brahmana, a Chandala, that is a dog eater, a dog or a cow, due to his spiritual vision. Srila Sukdev Goswami attained that stage. Thus, he did not see a male or female. He saw all living entities in different dress. The ladies who were bathing could understand the mind of a man simply by studying his demeanor, just as by looking at a child, one can understand how innocent he is. Sukdev Goswami was a young boy, 16 years old, and therefore all the parts of his body were developed. He was naked also, and so were the ladies. But because Sukdev Goswami was transcendental to sex relations, he appeared very innocent. The ladies, by their special qualifications, could sense this at once, and therefore they were not very concerned about him. But when his father passed, the ladies quickly dressed. Prabhu, you can...
Yeah, the ladies were... Please read.
Yeah. The ladies were exactly like his children or grandchildren, yet they reacted to the presence of Vyasdev according to the social custom, because Srila Vyasdev played the part of a householder. A householder has to distinguish between male and female. Otherwise, he cannot be a householder. One should therefore attempt to know the distinction between body and soul without any attachment for male and female. As long as such distinction is there, one should not try to become a sannyasi like Sukdev Goswami. At least theoretically, one must be convinced that a living entity is neither male nor female. The outward dress is made of matter by material nature to attract the opposite sex, and thus keeps one entangled in material existence. A liberated soul is above this perverted distinction. He does not distinguish between one living being and another. For him, they are all one and the same spirit. The perfection of this spiritual vision is the liberated stage, and Srila Sukdev Goswami attained that stage. Srila Vyasdev was also in the transcendental stage, but because he was in the householder's life, he did not pretend to be a liberated soul as a matter of custom. Hare Krishna.
So you find this, this talks about the background of Sukdev Goswami. That how Sukdev Goswami, so when he was in the womb of his mother for a very long time, Vyasdev requested the child, "No, please come out, for so long you have been in the womb of your mother." And the child said, "No, I will not come out. But as soon as I come out, I would be caught up by Maya." Vyadev said, "I am the compiler of the Vedas, and I will give you Vedic knowledge by which you can conquer Maya." And then Sukdev Goswami replied that you yourself are in Maya, and that is why you are telling me to come out. Because you are thinking I am your son and you are my father. And after that, Vyadev said that, "Who can assure you that you will not be caught up by Maya?" And then Sukdev Goswami replies that only if the master of Maya speaks that, I can accept it. And then Krishna assures that he will not be caught up by Maya. And that is how Sukdev Goswami comes out. And as soon as he comes out, he starts moving towards the forest. And Vyasdev was going behind him, ha putra, please stop, my dear son." And there we find the ladies, especially Apsaras were there, who were bathing naked in the particular water body. So they didn't cover their bodies when Sukdev Goswami passed by, but when Vyasdev passed by, they covered their bodies. Because they could see in the eyes of Sukdev Goswami that he doesn't see on the platform of body. So ladies have that special power. But Vyasdev, because he was a householder, he had to distinguish between male and female. And that is why they covered their bodies. So Prabhupada writes a remarkable statement at the end. He says that Vyadev was in the transcendent stage, but he was in householder's life. So he did not pretend to be a liberated soul. That means even if somebody is liberated, one has to act according to one's social custom. So that has to be followed. And we find that how even personalities like Lord Chaitanya, when they would come, they would follow certain social customs, although he was liberated. So somebody can speak of one or two incidences where Mahaprabhu strongly followed social custom. So there are many examples. Yeah, please. Diksha Mataji, you are speaking? You are speaking.
Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pranam. Prabhuji, one time, like the father Jagannath Mishra, he did his last ceremonies in Gaya. So this is one of the social custom I could remember.
Yeah, he did a Shraddha ceremony. Although he is Supreme Lord himself, and Jagannath Mishra is also a liberate person. So that is social custom. Yes, Duti Gopi Mataji.
Praj, it's more like related to how he followed the ashram when, when he heard the woman singing and he started running. So when his servant stopped him, so he said that you saved me, because a sannyasi shouldn't be attracted to a woman singing. And also when in Jagannath Puri, when devotees came, so there was this one specific devotee who was, who also mentioned about his wife who had come to meet Mahaprabhu, but Mahaprabhu didn't respond, because because he was a sannyasi, so he didn't respond to about how that his wife has also come. So that's how he depicted.
Thank you. So very beautiful examples. So one example is how he heard the singing of the Devadasis, and then he was about to go and embrace the person who had spoken, because he was so much impressed by the person and person's devotion. And Govinda stopped him. And Mahaprabhu said, Govinda, today you saved my life. And also Parameswari Modak, as far as I remember his name. So Parameswari Modak, who was almost his father's age, and certainly his wife would be of mother's age. Despite Parameswari Modak, he spoke about his wife's name, Mahaprabhu was not very happy. And also he would not allow women to come very near. He would accept the obeisance only from a distance. So that is how he would follow social custom, although he is Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So thank you. So very beautiful examples. Diksha Mataji has something else also to speak, or it is from before?
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, like when Mahaprabhu got married, also the whole of the customs were followed, like social customs were followed. So one other example.
Yeah. So he followed all the customs properly. Thank you. So that is how. So although one may be a liberated soul, but then one should follow the Vaishnava etiquette and the social customs very, very diligently and very, very carefully. So still Vyasadeva, although he is incarnation of Supreme Lord, but then he followed that custom of householder life. So thank you. So these are various examples. Okay. Somebody can read the next text number 6.
How was he, Srila Shukdev, the son of Vyas, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapur, now Delhi, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangal, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded?
Yeah. So it is not that, as we are speaking, that somewhere there was a poster and it was written that Srila Shukdev Goswami is going to speak Srimad Bhagavatam. And then people could identify him. Nobody knew his identity. Nowhere in the Facebook he had account, or Twitter he had account. And he would appear like a madman, dumb man, retarded person. So how was he recognized? Rather, sometimes to recognize such a person becomes very difficult. So I remember when I was attending Bhakti Vedanta, so Pankaj Hangipur was giving a class. So Pankaj Hangipur was speaking about a particular incident which happened with him in Mayapur. So he and Janay Navas Prabhu, they were in Mayapur and they were looking down from the terrace. So in those days, because most of the Mayapur was forest, almost farms were there. So both of them saw one particular person who was looking like a madman. And just in a, what we say, light mood, so they asked this person, "Hey Pagala, what are you doing?" So they called him Pagala. But then they found that this person took some broken glass. He was carrying Ganga water in that. And in a nearby Tulsi plant, he was pouring this Ganga water. So immediately he said that we really understood that he's looking like a madman, but he's not a madman. He's an exalted personality, although he's looking like a madman. So immediately he said that we felt that we have offended this person. So we went to the kitchen, we took some prasad, and then we offered him some prasad as a repentance that we have offended a great personality. So many times great personalities may also appear like a madman, dumb, and retarded person. So how could Sukdev Goswami be recognized? That is the first question. Because there were no photographs in those days. Yes. Next question. Please read text 7.
How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him?
Yeah. So how did it happen that both the people met together? There was no meeting which was fixed. No venue for the meeting which was fixed. And as far as Sukdev Goswami is concerned, there was, he would move here and there anywhere. Parikshit Maharaj also, he was cursed. He could have gone anywhere. So how is it possible that both these great personalities met each other and then the transcendent essence of the Vedas, Srimad Bhagavatam was sung? So how was it possible? And then the next question comes. You can repeat after me. Sa go dohan matram hi
matram hi
grihesu grahe medhinam avekshate mahabhagas tirthi kurvam sitadasramam. Please read the translation.
He, Shukadev Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify the residence.
You can read the purport also.
Shukadev Goswami met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at any householder's residence for more than half an hour at the time of milking the cow, and he would just take alms from the fortunate householder. That was to sanctify the residence by his auspicious presence. Therefore, Shukadev Goswami is an ideal preacher established in the transcendental position. From his activities, those who are in the renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of preaching the message of Godhead should learn that they have no business with householders save and except to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alms from the householder should be for the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of householders' worldly possessions and thus become subservient to worldly men. For one who is in the renounced order of life, this is much more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide.
Yeah. So sa go dohan matrena. So he would stay in the house of householders till the cows are milked. And Parikshit Maharaj is not just a householder, he's also the emperor of the world. So how did he spend 7 days, 7 nights with Parikshit Maharaj? So this is a question which they pose. They put in front of Suta Goswami. And also Prabhupada gives a very powerful purport. So he writes, why a person in renounced order should not stay for very long with the householder? Because one may become allured by the wealth and comforts. And if one becomes allured by wealth and comforts, then it's difficult for him to continue in renounced order. And also if one goes with any other purpose apart from enlightening that person, especially one takes some obligation, so then one cannot speak the truth. It becomes difficult. Now, certainly it becomes difficult for us to follow in all the places. But generally, that is the reason why in the Vedic culture, teacher would not accept fees from the students. Because as soon as you accept a fees, you become obliged. Or nobody would be paid. That's why Prabhupada sometimes criticizes the Bhagavad Saptah. Because when you do Bhagavad Saptah, then one has to speak in order to please the audience. Because one has taken so much money. If you bore the audience, they will not invite you for the next time. And that's why generally we find, I wouldn't say all the Bhagavad Saptah, but many Bhagavad Saptah, they speak just to impress the audience and just to get the money. So one cannot speak the truth at that time. Like if he, because I'm from UP, Uttar Pradesh, so a lot of people speak Bhagavad Saptah. So they have some certain very famous episodes to speak about. Like all the people would certainly have Krishna Janma, because Krishna Janma is there, Krishna is appearing, then the donations would come at that time. And second one is Rukmini Vivah. So they would take one harmonium. Aaj mere Shyam ki shaadi hai, Shyam ki shaadi hai. And they would accept a lot of donations from that. And then another one which is very famous is Sudama Charitra. Because Sudama, he gave just palm full of chipped rice and he got so much of wealth. So then all these people will say that all the people should open their arms. Sab log haath khol dijiye. Aaj Bhagwan chappar phaad ke dene wale. Lord is going to give in plenty. Open your arms. Nobody should close their arms. And people also like that, because people generally are allured by karma kanda. So generally people, they perform dharma for artha, because they don't know that the pleasure which is derived from sense object is so inferior to the pleasure derived from pleasing Krishna itself. So pleasure which comes from pleasing Krishna is much superior to the pleasure which one gets from the sense objects which one may get from Krishna. So that people are not convinced about. And that is why even Bhagavatam is presented in a Karmakanda view by the so many people who do give Bhagavad Saptah. Not all of them, but many of them. So that is how. So that's why Prabhupada is also warning the people in renounce order that one should go in the house of the householders just to enlighten them and for no other purpose. Like Prabhupada also speaks at many places why people from renounce order generally recommended not to attend the marriages. So somebody can tell the reason why Prabhupada prohibits that, or the scriptures prohibit that. Prabhupada speaks in many lectures. Why people in the renounce order generally have spoken that one should not attend the marriages. Okay. Padma Radha Mataji, yes.
It will increase their urge because they are practicing the renounced order, and that can affect their sadhana basically.
Yeah.
Get the urge.
Yes, yes. Thank you. So the one reason is that if the person in renounce order, he sees that this person who is getting married is so happy, he may think, oh, let me also get married. And if a person who is going to get married sees this particular person in renounce order is looking so blissful, he may come out of the marriage. He may run away from the marriage. So that's why it is recommended that no, they should not go. That is why when Brahmaji comes with Narada Muni, Chatuskumaras, and many other sages, to get the sages to be married to the daughters of Kardama Muni, he indicates he himself along with Chatuskumaras and the Narada, they go back. They don't attend the marriage ceremonies, because one may influence each other. So that is the main reason. So similarly, find there are prohibitions in the for the renounced people in renounced order for certain reasons. Please read the next one. Next question. Text 9.
It is said that Maharaja Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him.
Yeah. So till now they were speaking about the speaker and the circumstances. Now they are asking about the background of Parikshit Maharaj, that we know that he's a first-class devotee of the Lord. So we also want to know about the person who was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Because a person who is a devotee of the Lord certainly would not like to hear Prajalpa. He would like to hear about Krishna. So Sukadeva Goswami, he generally doesn't give audience to householders. He goes only for enlightening them. That means he must have spoken Hari Katha, because he goes for the purpose of enlightenment. Similarly, Maharaj Parikshit, he also is a first-class devotee of the Lord. He's interested in hearing Hari Katha. So when a speaker is interested in speaking Hari Katha, rather he goes to the people only for speaking Hari Katha, and the hearer is also interested only in Hari Katha, 100% sure Hari Katha must be going on. And please tell us about the glory of the hearer also, Parikshit Maharaj, because he's a first-class devotee. His birth and activities are all wonderful. So we want to hear about him also. And further the glories of Parikshit Maharaj, and the next question is asked. Please read text 10, sorry.
He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death?
Yeah, so the next question. He was just not an emperor who had all the opulences. So first thing is that somebody who has all the wealth of the world, why will he become renounced? When one doesn't have wealth, it's very easy to get renounced. Like for a poor man to speak about the glories of donation is very easy. Glories of charity is very easy, because he doesn't have anything to lose. But for a person who has wealth to speak about charity, that means people will expect him to give charity also. So similarly, this Parikshit Maharaj, he had the opulence of the whole world. Why did he renounce everything and come? And he's simply hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And he didn't have just wealth. He was also increasing the prestige of Pandu dynasty by giving the benefit to the entire world. So he was ruling the whole world with such a righteousness. So why did he leave everything? He left his wealth, he left the prestige. Because puja, la, pratishta, the other things for which everybody works. So he had all these things, but then he left everything and he's just sitting down on the bank of the Ganges and fasting till death. So why did he just leave the opulences of the world? So this is an interesting question. Text 11.
He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life?
Yeah. So generally, these are the things for which people attach to. So people attach to wealth, he gave up wealth. People attach to prestige, he gave up the prestige. And somebody may just get renounced in mode of passion. So what is renunciation in mode of passion? Somebody remembers? In Bhagavad-Gita, we learned about renunciation in mode of passion. So he
Dukham
also
ityeva yat karma. Yeah.
yeah.
It
You
is
can
saying
repeat.
that
Hmm.
it is considering it as a source of misery, like dukham ityeva yat karma kaya kleshya.
Thank you.
Sakrutva rajasa.
Thank you. So one thinks that these duties are troublesome, so let me give them up. And that is why one gives up. So he didn't have that problem also. Because he was such a great emperor that automatically enemies would come, bow down to him and surrender their wealth for their own benefit. So he had no rivals, no one to challenge him. So it's not that no, he had any trouble and that's why he gave up everything and he renounced. No, we don't find such a thing with him also. Somebody may renounce because the appropriate time comes. He becomes old. As a vanaprastha, one is supposed to renounce. No, he was full of youth. So it was not a time for him to renounce. So he had full youth, he had full strength. And he also had those kingly opulences which are very difficult to give up. So like Churchill spoke this famous statement that men of this world can face the adversities. But if you want to test the character of a person, give him power. So when dangers come, many people can face the dangers, face the adversities. But when one is given power and one uses it properly, that time one's character is tested. So that's very difficult for those who don't have opulence to say, oh, this person is attached to the opulence. But one who has that opulence to give it up is very, very difficult. So those kingly opulence which are very difficult to give up, he gave them up. And most dear thing to any person in this world is his own life. And he was ready to give his own life. What was the reason? So they're like very grave questions. And then this famous verse, you can repeat after me. Sivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaye. Ya uttama sloka parayana jana. Jivanti natmartham aso parasrayam. Mumocha nirvidya kuta kalevaram. Please read the translation.
Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So, even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachments to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was shelter for others?
Yeah. So like very beautiful verse which says Sivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaye. Ya uttam slok parayana jana. So those who are uttam slok parayan, those who are great devotees of the Lord, because Lord's one name is Uttam Slok. So such a people, they live for the development and happiness for others. They don't live for themselves. So till the previous verse, the question was asked was that he had all the things of this world and life of a person is most dear to him. How could he give it up? But then the question comes, okay, fine. He gave it up because he was very detached. But as far as devotees like Parikshit are concerned, they're Uttam Slok Parayan. They live for the welfare of others. They live for the development of others. And as a devotee of the Lord, it was his responsibility to rule in a way that people become devotees. So he had that position, that ability, and he could have used it for preaching purpose. Why would he just give it up? Why did he just give it up? So jivanti na atma artham aso parasrayam. So such a devotee, they don't live for their own artha. So mumo nirvidya kuta kalevram. So how could he give up this mortal body which was shelter for others, which was used for the welfare of others. Fine, he is detached. For personal reasons, he could have given up, but his body was not his property. His body was shelter for everyone. So how could he give it up? So this was quite a grave and strong question which they had. Please read the purport. Purport is also very powerful.
Parikshit, yeah.
Okay.
Parikshit Maharaj was
an ideal king and householder because he was a devotee of the personality of Godhead. A devotee of the Lord automatically has all good qualifications, and the emperor was a typical example of this. Personally, he had no attachment for all the worldly opulences in his possession, but since he was king for all the all-round welfare of his citizens, he was always busy in the welfare work of the public, not only for this life, but also for the next. He would not allow slaughterhouses or killing of cows. He was not a foolish and partial administrator who would arrange for the protection of one living being and allow another to be killed. Because he was a devotee of the Lord, he knew perfectly well how to conduct his administration for everyone's happiness, men, animals, plants, and all living creatures. He was not selfishly interested. Selfishness is either self-centered or self-extended. He was neither. His interest was to please the supreme truth, the personality of Godhead. The king is the representative of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the king's interest must be identical with that of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord wants all living beings to be obedient to him and thereby become happy. Therefore, the king's interest is to guide all subjects back to the kingdom of God. Hence, the activities of the citizens should be so coordinated that they can at the end go back home, back to Godhead. Under the administration of a representative king, the kingdom is full of opulence. At that time, human beings need not eat animals. There are ample food grains, milk, fruit, and vegetables, so that human beings as well as the animals can eat sumptuously and to their heart's content. If all living beings are satisfied with food and shelter and obey the prescribed rules, there cannot be any disturbance between one living being and another. Emperor Parikshit was a worthy king, and therefore all were happy during his reign.
Yeah, thank you. So in this way, we find that Parikshit Maharaj was a worthy king. He was not just taking care of the human beings, he was taking care of animals, plants, and everyone. Because in the Vedic age, kings won't consider only human beings to be their own citizens. They would even consider the animals and plants to be their own citizens. So that is why he was working for the welfare of everyone. So he won't allow human beings to be taken care and while allowing cows to be killed. There are certain very, I would say, like strong examples or very ideal examples in the scriptures where we find kings who would take care of all the citizens, including the animals, birds, plants. Somebody would like to give some examples? Just unmute and speak.
The example of Shivi Maharaj, wherein he gives equal amount of flesh from his own body to protect the bird who had taken shelter to the hawk who had chased after the bird. So,
yeah. Thank you. So King Sibi, who gave up his own flesh for saving the life of a pigeon from an eagle. So that's why he would consider even the pigeon and the eagle, both of them to be his own citizens. Any other example we have from the scriptures where we find kings taking care of the other people apart from human beings, other living creatures also?
There is an example in the Ramayana wherein the dog comes and he starts to ring the bell in Lord Ram's kingdom, and then Lord Ram inquires from him why he does so, and then he tells that how he was a Mathadish earlier. So that is an example. So Lord Ram actually takes care of that dog.
Okay.
And there is
Radha Patru really likes being Mathadish.
And another example is from Lord Chaitanya when he was feeding Shivananda Sen's dog. So this dog was lost, and then he found his way to Mahaprabhu, and then Mahaprabhu actually delivered him back to Godhead.
Thank you. So we find Lord Ram taking care of the, even the ordinary dog. And we have example of Parikshit Maharaj himself punishing Kali for beating the bull and torturing both the cows and the bull. So in this way, we find all these kings, they would take care of even other living entities also, apart from men. So such a person who was so selfless, how could he give up his own body? That's a good question. Please read text 13. Both translation and purport.
Hare Krishna. So, text 13, we know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Purport. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and the Parivrajakas. The Brahmanas are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifice mentioned in the Vedas, but the Parivrajacharyas or learned preachers are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivarcharyas are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras, which are practiced systematically by accent and meter by the Brahmanas, who are meant for administering Vedic rites. It should not be considered that the Brahmanas are more important than the itinerant preachers. They are one and different simultaneously because they are meant for the same end in different ways. Hare Krishna.
So as far as Sud Goswami is concerned, he was expert in Puranas. So that's why they say that you are expert in meaning of all subjects except some portion of the Vedas. So maybe those are Karmakandi scriptures, etc., and pronunciation, etc. You may not be expert in them, but you are very expert in Puranas. So you can answer all our questions. And Prabhupada said that difference between Vedas and Puranas is like Brahmanas and Parivarcharyas. So those who are Brahmanas, especially the Karmakandi Brahmanas, they may be very expert in speaking the Vedic hymns, but they may not know the essence of the Vedic scriptures. So what are such people called? Prabhupada writes in, you must have read in Bhakti Shastri course. Who are those people who are very expert in reciting Vedas, but they don't know the essence of the Vedas? So what do we call them?
Vedavadarata.
Yeah. Vedavadarata. Thank you. So Vedavadarata. So Prabhupada mentioned both in Bhagavad-Gita also and Isopanishad also. So such people, they are expert in that. Now those who are preachers, they may not be very expert in pronouncing the Vedic hymns, slokas, but they know the essence. So that is how they are considered more important. Although Brahmanas also have a certain role to play. So Brahmanas, they slowly take a person through the Vedic ladder, yoga ladder, and they raise the consciousness of the people. And those who are preachers, they directly give the essence of the scriptures. So they are Parivedikacharyas, those who move around and disseminate the Vedic knowledge or the essence of Vedic scriptures. The difference between the Brahmanas and the Parivedikacharyas. And now Sud Goswami starts speaking and answering the questions. So the reason why Vyasadeva divided the Veda. Now this some overlapping is also given here. So please read text 14th and the translation and the purport.
Hare Krishna. Suta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashar in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Purport. There is a chronological order of the 4 millenniums, namely Satya, Dwapar, Treta, and Kali. But sometimes there is overlapping. During the regime of Vaivashvata Manu, there was an overlapping of the 28th round of the 4 millenniums, and the third millennium appeared prior to the second. In that particular millennium, Lord Shri Krishna also descends, and because of this, there was some particular alteration. The mother of the great sage was Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu, fisherman, and the father was the great Parashar Muni. This is the history of Vyasadeva's birth. Every millennium is divided into 3 periods, and each period is called a Sandhya. Vyasadeva appeared in the third Sandhya of that particular age. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So this is the exact moment in which, or exact time when the Vyasadeva was born. So Parasar Muni, his ashram is also, currently it is near to Kanpur, this place called Parasan. So Parasar Muni stays there. And Vyasadeva was born in a place called Kalpi. It is also south of Kanpur. So that place called Kalpi. Earlier it was called Kalratri. So there he was born. And generally after Satyuga, as Prabhupada writes there, first Dwapar comes, then Treta comes. But in this particular millennia, after Satyuga, Treta came and then Dwapar came. And that was an indication of that in this particular time, Krishna appears in one Sunday of Brahma, and also Vyasadeva appears. Okay, Radha Patru has a question.
Prabhu, I had a question regarding this Satya, Dwapar, Treta, and Kali. So that is the regular order. Satya, Dwapar, Treta, Kali. So when Krishna comes, it becomes Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali.
Yes, Prabhu.
And then what about when Lord Ramachandra comes?
So Lord Ram comes, then it is supposed to be Satya, Dwapar, Treta, and Kali.
So it does not swap when he comes. It swaps only when Krishna comes.
Only when Krishna comes. That is what we find from here. And also Lord Ram didn't appear in this particular Treta.
Yeah,
So,
he appeared in 6th Manvantar.
26th. So I think 24th Parasuram
24th
appeared and 26th Lord Ram appeared.
He appeared in the 6th Manvantar and 24th Kali Yuga. 24th Treta Yuga.
Yuga cycle, yeah, 24th. So that time he appeared. So that time generally it is a sequence. So it's like clear from this particular purport that it always remains Satya, Dwapar, Treta, and Kali. Only here it became Satya, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali. Thank you. So there is the alteration which happens here. And Sandhya is generally the meeting time. Like currently also, if we say literally, it is not Kali Yuga which has come. It is just Sandhi Kal which is going on. So Sandhya. So during the Sandhya, when the one particular millennia ends, other one starts. So that time it happens. So that is the time in which Vyasadeva appeared. And please continue. Somebody can read board 15th and 16th.
Once upon a time, he, Vyasdeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the water of Saraswati and sat along to concentrate. Purport. The river Saraswati is flowing in the Badrikashram area of the Himalayas. So the place indicated here is Samaprasha in Badrikashram, where Shivyasdeva is residing.
Yeah. Please read 16 also.
The great sage Vyasdeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happened on the earth in different ages due to the unseen forces of time. The great sages like Vyasdeva are liberated souls, and therefore they can see clearly past and future. Thus he could see the future anomalies in the Kali Yuga, and he made arrangement for the people in general so that they can execute a progressive life in this age, which is full of darkness. The people in general in this age of Kali are too much interested in matter, which is temporary. Because of ignorance, they are unable to evaluate the essence of life and be enlightened in spiritual knowledge.
Thank you. So in this way, in this particular time when Vyasdev, he was doing his morning ablutions, that means he must be doing his Gayatri. And after that, he sat alone to concentrate. So he could see that Kali Yuga is producing anomalies. Anomalies means that dharma is no more followed. And then to benefit the people, he begins his compilation, which is given in 17th. So please read 17th, 18th. Both the verse and the purport.
The great sage who was fully equipped in knowledge could see through his transcendental vision and integration of everything material to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus, the contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. The unmanifested forces of time are so powerful that they reduce all matter to oblivion in due course. In Kali Yuga, the last millennium of around 4 millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of time. In this age, the duration of the material body of the people in general is much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportions as it did in other ages. The cow does not give as much milk as it used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and fruits is less than before. As such, all living beings, both men and women, both men and animals, do not have sumptuous nourished food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, naturally the duration of life is reduced, the memory is short, intelligence is meager, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy, and so on.
Yeah. So these are all the ill effects of Kali Yuga,
yes,
which he saw. So because of lack of goodness, people can't sit for a long time. They're very impatient. As soon as you tell them to chant, it's like one leg moves one side, another leg moves other side. So people are so restless. And so as Prabhupada writes, the power of the land also goes down, the power of matter goes down. So land doesn't produce much grains, cows don't produce much milk. Vegetarian fruits, they're much lesser than before. And people's life also becomes very short. Memory becomes very short. Earlier people were Shrutidas, they would hear and remember. Now people read the books, try to memorize it, and as soon as they come in front of the question paper, they forget everything. So after practicing so much, they also forget. So the memory is very short. Now you can just read the highlight portion.
Okay.
And all such transcendentalists.
Yeah, and all such transcendentalists who are naturally devotees of the Lord are always eager to render welfare service to the people in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is going to happen 5 minutes ahead. In this age, the people in general, as well as their so-called leaders, are all unlucky fellows, faithless in spiritual knowledge and influenced by the age of Kali. They are always disturbed by various diseases. For example, in the present age, there are so many TB patients and TB hospitals. But formerly, this was not so because the time was not so unfavorable. The unfortunate men of this age are always reluctant to give reception to the transcendentalists who are representatives of Srila Vasudev and selfless workers always busy in planning something which may help everyone in all the statuses and orders of life. The greatest philanthropists are those transcendentalists who represent the mission of Vyasa, Narada, Madhava, Chaitanya, Rupa, Saraswati, etc. They are all one and the same. The the personalities may be different, but the aim of the mission is one and the same, namely to deliver the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So you find like Prabhupada is giving some example which we can all observe. Like as the age is passing, the diseases are increasing. So I remember still when I was in class 8th and I went to my grandfather's house. So I had a headache and my grandfather was very worried. He said, such a small child, how can he have a headache? And then he told me that he had only headache once in his whole life. Because he was the most wealthy person in the entire, it's like 20-25 villages. And then 40 dacoits came, they looted everything from the house. That is the time he got headache. Apart from that, he never got any headache. So sometimes he got loose motions. One time he got headache. And that was the only thing which he got. And even at the age of 88, he could crack any nut from his teeth. He had all the teeth intact. And nowadays, so many diseases. Even children sometimes, as soon as they are born with the spectacles. In the sense that immediately they get a spectacle. So many diseases are there. So that is how Kali Yuga is progressing. But our acharyas are the one who work for the welfare of everyone. So like previously I gave the example of personalities, the kings who were worried about all the citizens, not just men. So somebody can give example of some of the acharyas who have worked for the welfare of other living entities apart from human beings also. Some examples, maybe 1 or 2 examples like that. Yes, Paramanand. Yeah, Haridas Thakur. So you can explain a little bit about incidents also. Prove you're muted. You can just unmute.
Was chanting loudly. Benefiting to other living entities.
Yes.
Like the trees, herbs, animals, birds, and those who cannot speak, they can hear holiness. They can be liberated by hearing.
Yeah, thank you. So in this conversation with Lord Chaitanya, Haridas Thakur was saying how all these living entities will be delivered. And then, actually Lord Chaitanya was asking. And then Haridas Thakur said, when we hear the echo, it is inanimate objects, they are chanting Hare Krishna. It's their Sankirtan. So that is how they were worried about even the trees and plants. Yeah, Diksha Mataji, we had some.
Yes, Roji, one Raghunath Das Goswami or Raghunath Bhatt, please give correction that he was from a wealthy Zamindar family, and then he became a minister, and he took care of all the I recently heard that all the temples in Vrindavan, Madan Mohan temple, and all the temples, the rulers there took direction from Raghunath Das Goswami or Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, and then they made all the temples. So Raghunath Das Goswami thought about everybody by building these temples, the Vrindavan temples.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Duti Gopi Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. So there's this example of Madhvacharya, where Madhvacharya used to give Bhagavatam classes in a cow shed. So people used to ask him, who will be the next leader after you? So he pointed at a bull, that the bull will be, the next leader. And Jayatirth, the bull was incarnated as Jayatirth, and so basically Madhvacharya was speaking Bhagavatam so that all the animals could also hear, and in next life they came as empowered acharyas.
Yeah, thank you. So, Jayatirtha.
Jayatirtha.
Yes, Damodar Bhakti Mataji.
Once when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was crossing the jungle, he was doing a Sankirtan, chanting Mahamantra, and delivering the animals and even the trees also.
Yeah, thank you. So he delivered all the animals in Jharkhand. Okay, Devadatta Dhananjay Prabhu. You're muted, bro.
There is an example of Ramayunacharya who was going with his disciples once, and there was the lake, and there are various fishes in the lake. So he just put the prasadam in the lake, and immediately all the fish ate and they were delivered back to God.
Yes. So they immediately took a 400 Vishnu form and went back to God. Yes.
Yeah, correct. That's right.
Yes. Now somebody can just read from 19 to 21, all the three translations together.
He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Ved into 4 in order to expand them among men. Text 20. The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and the authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the 5th Ved. 21. After the Vedas were divided, after the Veds were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Ved, Gemini, the professor of Sam Ved, Vaishampayan alone became glorified by the Yajurved.
So these become professors. Prabhupada uses the word professor. Yes. So Paila Rishi of Rig Ved, Gemini of Sam Ved, Vaishampayan of Yajurved, Angira of Atharved, and Romharsan of the Puranas. Yes, please read 22 also.
The Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharved, and my father Rom Harshan was entrusted with the Puranas and the historical records.
In this way, Angira of Atharved and Rom Harshan of Puranas, and later on, because he didn't pay respects to Balramji, so Balramji with a small straw killed Rom Harshan Sut, and then Ugrasrava Sut was kept in his place. Anyway, so from 23rd we can take tomorrow. It's already time, so I don't want to unnecessarily extend the class. So from 23rd onwards we'll take. Okay, Dhananjay Prabhu can ask one question.
Hey, Krishna Prabhu. So I have a couple of questions, but basically it's all related. And there's Balram, he delivered Rom Harshan, and that was in the time of Parikshit. But when Lord Krishna, which was much before he finished the Leela, and before him, Balram also left to the South India, and from there he took a Sesna. So how we can contemplate that quite later, still this Balramji was still roaming on this planet Earth?
No, actually, as far as I can tell, my understanding of chronology is concerned. So this Romharsan Sutta, he was speaking because this series of Naimisaranya, they were not just sitting for some time. So we find other Puranas also, there is a mention of Sut Goswami and the sages of Naimisaranya. It was not the Srimad Bhagavatam which was spoken. So it seems that Vyasadeva wrote it much before, foreseeing the future. And then later on, this Romharsan Sutta, he was speaking, and this Balramji incidents happened there. Ugrasrava Sutta was kept on the place, but we are not very sure that these sages were all the sages of Naimisaranya only. We are not very sure about that. And because people had long ages, so what I understood is that later on, Ugrasrava Sut went to the Naimisaranya and then he spoke to the sages of Naimisaranya. So the people on whose assembly Romharsan Sutta was sent back to Godhead were not the sages of Naimisaranya. That is what I understand. So then things can be like reconciled. Is it clear?
Yes, Prabhuji. Now I can correlate and I can have, because these are the questions, since you do this college preaching and same is the domain, I also do it. So basically these are some of the, for materialist people, and still I am still in that position itself, we come across similar questions. Now another quick clarification, Prabhuji, because there's Kurukshetra, and this Lord Krishna spoke about Bhagavad-Gita. This is roughly 5,000 years back. This is also proven through the carbon dating. Now, similarly, for there's Bhagwan Ram era, and there's the bridge which has been built from Rameswaram to Sri Lanka, that is dated around 9,500 years back. So that is roughly 4,500 before this, when this Mahabharata happened. And these are all, then there's another NASA has, and with satellite positions and time calculations, they also developed the software, and which exactly predicts what is there in Ramayana, the positions of different celestials positions, and based on that say that it has happened 9,500 years back. Now when we say that it was happened in 26 millennium, and this is in 28 millennium, 28. So the time gap is huge between this 2 millennium. So how we understand this understanding?
Yeah. So what I understand is that if we see Valmiki Ramayana, then actually speaking, none of the things match when it comes to Lanka. So when it comes to Lanka, this may be a remnant of the bridge, which was made maybe later on or something like that. Because if you see the distances in Ramayana and the positions in Ramayana, none of these things match. So what I understand is that it may be some other place which is very far off. And as far as times, like ages pass by, certain lands disappear, certain lands appear. So there may be some other land at some other place, which is not exactly what we consider it to be now. So that is how I understand it. Because we also know that I was from exploration geophysics. You are my alumni. So there, we know that even a few years back, few decades back, when there was a tsunami, much of the land near Dhanuskoti, it's underwater now. So that land has gone underwater now. So lands keep on appearing and disappearing according to the different sea levels, according to different instances, which happens in the according to tectonic forces. So what happened in those times, we are not very sure. So it seems as if this particular place is not exactly what we think to be, but distances don't match. Dhanaskoti things are very clear, because Dhanaskoti, the waves move like this. That means the Lord Ram broke the bridge there only. That is very clear. But Lanka, where exactly Sri Lanka was there, is it the same Lanka? Same bridge is there or not? It doesn't seem to be same from the point of view of Valmiki Ramayana. So that's why when we preach, we should not preach as if it is the same thing. Otherwise, people may be confused. But things don't match. Most of the things don't match. That's my humble understanding. Okay. Dhananjay.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Probably this is the right instant to take about, because correlating too much with the modern science also it confuses sometimes, because we always cannot find a direct correlations with what is, and then another answer always it keeps on coming that that might be in the different period, like every day of Brahma this Leela is happening, so it might be on a different day of Brahma, and what we are seeing is a different day, because in between everything is the whole cosmos is created, and then it is go in a dormant condition. So probably yes, that can be the stand also can be taken. Probably.
Yeah, Kalpa Veda is always there. Kalpa Veda is Ramban for all the preachers of ISKCON. If nothing matches, then we say Kalpa Veda is there. And many times Prabhupada would also not answer. Like once Prabhupada was asked that in Andhra Pradesh we have the place Ugrastamba is there in Andhra Pradesh. And similarly, if you go to Pakistan, this particular place, it was earlier Prahlad, I just forgot the name. So there also Ugrastamba is there. So one devotee asked Prabhupada, Narsimhadev appeared in Andhra Pradesh or in Pakistan? And Prabhupada said, Ito Narsingha, Parto Narsingha. Narsimhadev is here and there. So it may be different Kalpa Veda. Kalpa Veda is Ramban, which we can always answer. But apart from that, it's difficult to predict, because now plate tectonics is there. Plate tectonics, is it exactly according to the Vedas, not Vedas? We are not very sure. So although a lot of things depend on plate tectonics, then you can say, okay, distances are matching. Sri Lanka is the Lanka. That is possibility. But we can't say with surety, because it doesn't exactly match with our Vedic scriptures, at least whatever I have read. So it's difficult to predict. Like he has spoken in one video, Dutkarma Pro, that there was Kumar Kantak, which is underwater now. There's some other land. So a lot of lands keep on disappearing and appearing. That is very sure. Like Dwarka itself became underwater. So land appearing and disappearing is like some phenomena which is seen many times. So it's very difficult to predict these things, unless we know the whole sequence of how these phenomena happen. It's difficult.
Right. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare.
Hare. So we'll end here. Already we're over time. So we'll again meet tomorrow. Damodar Bhakti Mata, you can ask tomorrow maybe. We'll keep for tomorrow.
Okay, Prabhu.
So we'll end here. Tantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Yes, sir.
Prabhupada ki.
Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Hari Bol.